And hello there again. Good to be with you here on PM Express with me, Blessed Sugai. And perhaps you might be hearing this for the very first time. If not, then you are aware indeed that Ghana has a recruitment scheme for fresh graduates, and that's what we call the National Service Scheme. If you know about it, obviously it's a recruitment scheme for those who are leaving the university for the very first time, but it's turning out to be something else, something beyond our imaginations, and that's why we can confirm to you tonight that the President has made instructive directives to the National Investigations Bureau to investigate, quote, ghost names on the National Service Authority's payroll. And many of you are wondering what the scheme in terms of suspected ghost names are. This is the volume we're looking at. A potential 81,000 plus ghost names detected according to the statement that was released by government today. But more shocking revelations will be coming along the way as we move on into this discussion, because we've been doing our own checks, looking at, first of all, the suspected cases, the actuals, the permutations, and the differences. And that's depicted here in this chart for you to give you a sense of what's happening. This is the number the National Service Authority presented to government as part of the 2024-2025 scheme as to the number of individuals who are supposedly rolled on to the National Service Scheme. Over 180,000 of them. The actual number is a staggering 98,145. So that gives us a clear picture of almost close to 80% more in terms of the rate at which we're doubling or perhaps adding on to people who are supposed to be serving the nation. And all these numbers potentially might not even have existed in the first place. So walk through the process with us. In terms of the taxpayer and how much this is costing us, 58.5 million Ghana cedis each and every month, if we're indeed assuming, without admitting for now, because the investigations would have to prove that 81,885 people are being paid for no work done at the end of the month. 58.5. And pay attention to the figures, because it gets higher and shocking even as we move forward, because this is how much we're paying in all as a taxpayer if we're to do the permutations in a year. 702.5 million Ghana cedis. And why is that instructive? Because if you're looking at key areas, key sectors of social protection, employment, for instance, the allocation we do each and every year as a people through our government, that money is way above that of housing and employment. And that's how crucial that figure is, because this 702.5 million, potentially, it could be more, it could be less, that is going to waste or perhaps into someone's private pockets. That's higher than an entire ministerial allocation of 600 million, for instance, to the Works and Housing Ministry, if you're going by the Ministry of Finance permutation of the allocations being done each and every year on the average, and also the Ministry of Employment as well. Even critical institutions fighting for human rights, SHRAJ, is just dealing way around 88 million in terms of the allocation. That's how significant this problem is. But on paper, we know that, of course, the National Media Commission is also being allocated some budget, 23.5. And if you're looking at all of that, this is way higher than the figure that we're looking at in terms of the addition of all of these institutions that provide critical services to the country. And that's why many of us are worried, wondering what has been happening over the years at NSS. You take a look at the issue about the trend of postings that we've had each and every year. The numbers were the highest in the last year of the Akufo-Addo administration. In fact, it dropped marginally in the very end when, of course, these 2024-2025 batch were rolled onto the scheme, because the highest was in 2023-2024 academic year, where the figures shot all the way up to 122,000. But now we're dealing with a potential of about 106,000, as you see here. But it's been a 52-year journey for this institution that used to be the National Service Secretariat or Service. Now it's an authority. And after 52 years, just take a look at why it was set up, first of all. To enhance, first of all, graduates' practical experience. So, of course, you are ready for the job market, grilled a bit, and, of course, you are able to encounter real-time experiences that the classrooms will not teach you. Beyond that, there's the need for that service to be cultivating a sense of duty and patriotism of all the issues and very key matters patriotism is key because it's very much required for national development. Then there's the issue about providing essential services to remote areas where, of course, you can't find teachers, for instance. Then you can post all of these persons to such communities. There's also the leg about what more the NSS could do in enhancing the developmental agenda of the country. But after 52 years, the question is the NSS indeed performing as it should? And looking at the pay fraud issues that we're dealing with, how do we reform it and to make the National Service Scheme a better one? You have your opinion. I'll let my guests also share theirs, and then we'll see what the way forward will be. But be my guest on PM Express. I am Blessed Suga, and welcome to the show again. We'll get into the details and also hear from the National Service Authority itself right after this. And it's a good time to dig into the conversation, but I can't do that without telling you about those supporting PM Express. Syntex Tank is, of course, helping us out with the conversation. It is strong, it is tough, and for those of you who are wondering how you can get a reliable tank this Valentine, all you need to do is to call them on 0244-335-168, or you can also visit syntexgh.com, and of course you can get yours today. And Syntex Tank, a tough, a strong, that's the message they're sending across to you. We're also being supported by Pepsodent Cavity Fighter, and don't forget that you can always call the customer care toll-free line, which they have. It's 0800,000 2030. So 0800,000 2030, and Pepsodent, every smile matters. Academic Times is also supporting us, and they are coming up with the High School G and Junior G academic journals, which will impact society. And so for those of you who are looking forward to work with this journal, just reach them via email. It's info@theacademictimes.com, or you can also call them on 053 050 8034. And that's bringing us to our conversation for tonight, the National Service Scheme and how to improve it amidst the directive coming through from the President. My guest for tonight, Felix Jemfi, is the Director General of the National Service Authority. Good evening, sir, and
good evening.
Welcome to our studios. It's good to have you, because it's going to be a very long night of hearing the broad picture of how the President intends to reform the service amidst the reports we are hearing of. But prior to that, a number of institutions were making that attempt to call for reforms and investigation, and that includes Suleiman Ibrahim's Media Foundation for West Africa. He's the executive director of the group and is joining us via Zoom. Then we have Richard Kumado, who's a fraud and security consultant, also joining the conversation for tonight. And let's start off from the security perspective, because the President has given that directive already, asking the National Investigations Bureau to look into the potential cases, over 80,000 suspected ghost names. And that's why I want to hear from you, first of all, Richard, because you have worked in this intelligence space. Many are wondering how the NIB will be approaching this, knowing that they are ghost names and it will take a lot of time to track over 80,000. That's how many there are. Richard?
Definitely it's a simple assignment for the BNI. The BNI have offices across the whole district in Ghana. What they can do, if they want to escalate it on a very fast mode, they pick their register within a specific period, and they do a head count with the help of the National Service District Office. Then they will look at the total number of people graduating in a year. Then they will look at the payroll coming from the Registrar General. Then they will pick some few documents from the National Service Secretariat. And once you begin to do the reconciliation, mostly payroll fraud is basically channeled through off-balance sheet payment. And so by the time you do the head count at the district, you reconcile with the actual payment being made out from the Controller and Accountant General. Then you look at the total number of people who graduated in the year, whether others are doing 1 year or 2 years. By the time you get to the National Service Secretariat, you are clear which areas to do the reconciliation and where the red flags will be coming from. And it makes life easier for everybody within the investigation.
Right, and to be fair, this issue about payroll fraud is quite, rampant in the public sector space. So it's fair to say it's not just an NSS problem, but a problem in the public space. Where do you often diagnose the problem from? From the national or the district level?
You could do it from both sides. You could tackle it from the regional or from the national, or you could take it from the district. The challenge has always been that some of these monies can be used for political party funding activities. And so the rare people you need to help you clean out the books, they don't. Take an example. When you take Barclays Bank, for instance, when I was working at GT Bank, these are banks that have branches all over the country or all over the world. And when you apply today, they could pay you your money even without a Ghana card that has biometrics. And you are not likely to have some of these fraud attempts we are talking about, which means that somebody deliberately, with instruction with people above him or her, has created a parallel payment system that do not go through the original channel. And they scream about it, and that is how come you have the huge numbers coming up. What do you want to do as a nation if you want to clean it up? Have a baseline approach. And once you take it out from the baseline approach, by the time you wake up your way upstairs, you will realize where the red flags are and where the warning signs are, and you could clean it up as quickly as possible.
It's instructive that you're talking about political party funding activities infiltrating the NSS. How does that work? Is that why we're having the ghost names? Are they non-existent in your view, or these are just individuals who are not deserving to be on the payroll?
They do it in two ways. Sometimes they put people on their payroll, not just the NSS. In some other public institutions, they put some other people on the payroll who've never been to those offices, and they pay them at the end of the month, or they do not exist at all. In the case of the NSS, my suspicion is that there are large numbers of people who do not exist, and they create an off-balance sheet payment role for them, and the money goes to somebody where they distribute it to political party funding activity.
I see. Very interesting points you're raising there. And just hold on for us. Let's bring in Suleiman Brahima because his group at least did some work through the Fourth Estate, and subsequently oral was petitioned, I recall, Suleiman, at the point about how practically you took steps to, first of all, investigate the scheme, and you came up with some ghost names. Perhaps the numbers are even more than what government is communicating to us now. Tell us about, that constant campaign you waged and the kind of revelations that you saw firsthand.
Well, thank you very much. I think that the work that the Media Foundation did through the Fourth Estate Investigative Journalism Project really puts out all the facts, and certainly it should make the work of the NIB very, very easy, because we established the numbers, we produced evidence in terms of the kinds of people who were on the scheme. And by the way, I should say that tomorrow morning we are publishing the inside story, which would get people to have more details about how this whole thing was done, the numbers and all. And we did provide evidence of instances where persons who were 90-year-old, I mean, whether they were real or not, but these are individuals whose date of birth are on the National Service Authorities portal. It shows that they are 90 years, 80 years, 70 years, and we are talking about people who were posted in 2022. And apart from that, the then MPP candidate and our vice president, Dr. Bawumia, throughout the campaign, used to flag the NSA, the National Service Authority, NSS then, as one of the success stories of how the Ghana card has been used to eliminate ghost names. And so it was quite baffling that you go into the system, the NSS system, their portal, their tech platform, and what you find are, in some cases, no ID cards used. In some cases, we had instances where ID cards of Ghana National Fire Service was used. We have instances where, a lot of instances where fake voter ID cards were used instead of Ghana card. And we had instances where teacher training college ID cards were used instead of Ghana card. And in fact, in the section where the ID cards are put, what is written on top is upload your Ghana card. And so you upload your Ghana card, and what you find is either a voter's ID, a student ID, and no ID at all, and all the things that you can think about. Right. So the data is available, and I think it will make any investigations quite easy.
Okay. The question now is about the estimation you've done. Government says they're working with 81,000 plus, just around 81,000. What figures do you have per the investigations that you've done?
So year on year, the numbers kept changing. So there were years that they put in about 50,000. There were years they put in 60,000. And there were years they put in 80,000 or more. And in this particular instance, as the government has communicated, what it shows is that there were over 81,000. And we are talking about the current national service year, which is 2024-2025. And so the numbers are not or have not been constant. In the very first year of President Akufo-Addo's government, what the numbers that the national service scheme then advertised as the eligible total number of students to do national service in that year, which was 2017-2018, the numbers who eventually, the number of people who eventually enrolled were lesser than the numbers advertised as those who are eligible. And that is normal. That is supposed to be the norm. Because if you have 80,000 students completing schools in all the eligible tertiary schools whose students must do national service, what is normal is that not everyone who is completing school will do national service that year. Some may travel, some will not enroll at all, some may even decline their postings because they don't like where they have been posted to, and so on. Yes, what it also means is that in the ensuing year or in that same year, there's the possibility that people who ought to have done national service previously would now come back and say they want to do national service. And so when I said it to one of the bosses in one of the interviews, what he said was that, yes, we understand that. That's like almost like a trotro. Some will be getting down, some will be boarding. But you have a situation where in 1 year, there's a difference of 60,000. So between one academic year, you have 60,000 more students doing national service. But blessed, what is also sad is that what we found reveals a very scandalous pattern of lack of oversight by our parliament. Because, in fact, part of the data we have is data presented to the Parliamentary Committee on Education. And that was, a presentation made by the National Service Scheme to the parliamentarians as part of the processes towards getting the NSA or the scheme to become an authority. And our parliamentarians looked on without questioning the numbers that had obviously been inflated. Because, if you have 2021, 2022...
Then you should be asking questions, obviously.
Exactly. But nothing happens, and we are where we are.
This is what I want us to do. I'll come to Felix shortly, but in a minute, deal with this for me before I put all the questions to him and the concerns from Richard as well. You met with the Operation Recover or Loot team, correct? Do you feel that some of these decisions, especially the one coming through from the presidency, might be influenced by that? And how much information did you devote to this Operation Recover or Loot task force?
Well, we thought that the whole thing was so scandalous that it shouldn't just be allowed to be one of those things. And so we thought that, well, as media people, we don't have the power to arrest. We don't have the power to prosecute. So any process at all, that will help to ensure that persons behind this are punished and, resources belonging to the state saved. we needed to pursue it. And that is why we went to Aura. And when we met with the team, we gave them all the data that we had. Data from the NSA portal that shows fake ID numbers that were used. And that is another major area. And I'll be surprised if our universities remain silent, because you have thousands and thousands of fake student IDs created in the name of our universities. And two universities that really come up strongly in this are University for Development Studies and the University of Education in Winneba, where you have thousands and thousands of fake IDs, and it also includes the University of Cape Coast. And all these schools, when we showed them the IDs supposedly for students coming from their universities, they all felt quite scandalized.
Interesting.
We don't have numbers like this. So we gave Aura everything that we had, the thousands of names that we had, and took them through the processes to query the NSA portal to validate some of the things that we had said for themselves.
And based on what you've told me, as well as the concerns of Richard, I'm interested in knowing what the NSA, National Service Authority now, will be doing about all of this. And Felix, I must say, this is not a good time to be taking up the post as the Director General. Uneasy lies the head that was wearing the crown now, because you would have to carry out effectively some significant reforms at the NSA. But talk to us, first of all, about this directive from the President. And given what the Fourth Estate has discovered, what is going to happen next?
Thank you. It's a bit difficult lately going around saying you're the Director General for National Service. But I think that decision was also well considered, because I have worked at the National Service for a good
number of years.
15 years.
Oh, okay.
I think this year I would be. So I understand the context of this discussion very well. What is quite shocking is that although I was a staff there, I didn't know this was going on at all. So it's possible that you were working at NSA for all these years and you wouldn't know that something at all is going on. I have been shocked about some of the revelations that we have come to. And to do what we have started already is just natural, because what has happened is not only criminal, it's also immoral. It is shocking, it's grim, and then despicable, to say the least. I collaborated with the presidency in releasing this information, because although I arrived 15 days ago at the NSA, we had hints of what was going on. So at the back of this appointment, we had started preparing what we had to do. So right from day one, we wanted to know who is where and what numbers ought to be paid. Right. So it's just right that the Minister of Finance and then the Controller and Accountant General asked for actual numbers who are in our database and who were supposed to be paid. So in actual terms, there was indeed a head count. This is not some story you're making up. We have had to go through several pathways to make sure that the numbers that we have there are valid or come close to what people are actual.
Okay. Of course, the reason why I'm asking the question is the figure alone you're putting out is quite huge, over 80,000. And that's why many are wondering, did you really do a head count? Are you just putting out the figures to create that political impression that, well, we're saving the taxpayer?
Well, now, people who are involved also know that there's a new sheriff in town. President Mahama is leading with a different style, and then it follows from the head. Right. Now everybody has to come in line. I would not blink an eye to give somebody up at the National Service if I know you are involved in something like that. So for a start, you dare not put a ghost in this list that we have there. I mean, although we have presented this, today I'm still withholding some payments of certain people. So this number...
Even with the 91,000 we're talking about?
Yes, 98,000.
Yes, 98,000.
I'm still going to hold on with some payments. Tomorrow, of course, everybody will be paid, and then in the subsequent days, other people will be paid, but we're still going to hold on certain payments to check and then make sure that
these people are... So you're still not sure that even out of this 98,000, everyone is...
Majority of the people are going to be paid. Right. And if you are there, there should be no doubt at all For example,
But you still have issues.
there
Are
issues.
they many? Are they as
Oh, no.
Right.
They are not a lot.
Do we know the
there are
numbers?
conflicts. There are people in conflict areas that
Right.
I have to check, make sure that they actually, they haven't fled. You know what? And then all the safeguards were there, just the people did not allow the safeguards to work.
Right.
If they had allowed the safeguards to work, we wouldn't have been here. The consultant tells me he's written letters, countless number of letters to the former Director General, asking him that, allow me to do this. And then somehow his concerns were not listened to. If they had listened, I'm not sure what would have been there. It's quite sad. I mean, especially me who has worked there for several years. But I think that the integrity of our president runs down to all his appointments.
So you have no option but to enforce.
Yes.
But picking up on what Suleiman has told us, what Richard has told us, the first question to answer is the way forward on, the PINs or the is it the code of the candidates?
Yes.
The universities, as Suleiman is pointing out, is that something you realize, and perhaps you might be changing, or reforming?
I think that it will be very difficult for me to think that our vice chancellors, from where the final list of the university list comes to national service, would involve in something dastardly as that. We are going to this year institute a measure that would curtail all this. And then you be in no doubt that will be done. And
but practically speaking, how do we deal with that? Because the numbers are not coming from you.
Yeah.
Partly. These are from the universities.
Now we're dealing with security matters.
Okay.
I have had to tighten the security even at NSA because we have to be sure who is coming in and going out. And then I could tell you what we'll do. Now, the list will not only have to come from the universities themselves. It has to go through the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, because what we realized throughout this is that there are different numbers coming to national service and a different set of numbers going to the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission.
Right.
The universities wouldn't like to lie to GTech, but somehow they were lying to national service. But do pardon me, there's an investigation going on, which a report will be given to the president. I would not want to speak in a manner that will preempt the findings of these investigations. I would, in this conversation, if it goes on much longer, would be giving you the safeguards that we're putting in place.
Okay, so let's get into it then. Then, of course, I'll pick the thoughts of our other panelists on this. Practically, what are these safeguards, and how would they?
I've just mentioned
you've spoken about some of them. Yes. But beyond that, even the workers in there could be a point of contact, because some of them might add names.
I think that one of the biggest failures of that has allowed this to happen now is leadership. If you have the right leadership that is decisive and firm, you wouldn't have reports of this manner. And that is what every Ghanaian should look up to me for. I will lead with integrity, and these things will be a thing of the past very soon enough.
There's a feeling that this problem is way bigger than you, and you're taking up a challenge you might not necessarily win, because even in the public sector itself, payroll fraud, we're told, is a big problem, according to the Attorney General, the Auditor General. How then do we believe that you're coming in and you will change all of this?
Well, if you judge my demeanor, then you'll think that I will not surmount this problem. We will surmount it. I think we have very committed people. We have a robust system that has been in place for the past 8 years. I think that over time, I have heard from several people that we should change the system that the posting runs on. I have sat down with a consultant. I've spoken to other people. But I have also said that we should allow Ernst & Young and all the top auditing firms in Ghana, Ernst & Young and all the others that you can mention, to do a proper audit of our system and put the report out for everybody to see.
So that might also happen in the coming days?
Of course, we should do it. If the BNI's investigation goes through this, and then after they don't allow Ernst & Young or the other top auditing firms to do it, we are also ordered to do it. And we're not going to do it just for a year. We're going to make sure that it's done every year in the entire duration that
The other thing I'm interested in is to know about punitive measures, because I'm sure that even before this report came out, names have been out. The Fourth Estate, in fact, gave some leads. Have you interdicted some stuff? Are people paying the price for what happened?
Well, I have arrived at this place in the last 15 days. I have had no reports from the state agencies about what to do. I think that very soon enough, we'll have the report, and then when the report arrives, we'll act swiftly.
I see. Let's put that to you, Richard, because now the assurance is coming through that, first of all, a number of changes would happen. We won't see the usual case where the numbers are just giving right from the universities to the National Service Authority. At least GTEC will be coming in now as the intermediary, and then NSA will do its own checks. That suffices, correct?
That is just one layer of the control measure that my big brother Felix want to put in place. Those responsible for data entry are very key. And those who do reconciliations at the end of the month is also key. One of the key areas the BNI or the NIV will be looking at is those who input data into the system, from the district to the region to the national. My suspicion, having followed fraudsters and criminals for the past 29 years, is that people at the helm of affairs might be complicit, and they might be accomplices of this, considering the fact that they are posted there by politicians, and politicians want to bastardize the system as a soft ground for political party funding activity. Those at the district might not make as many errors as the people out there. My big brother Felix talks about as a young to do audit for us, but brother, is it not so surprising that he just said we have this system for the past 8 years? And didn't you know that as part of leadership, and if we want to prevent fraud purposely, that every year there has to be fraud audit within the systems we operate, right from the technical aspect to the operational aspect. And once you begin to have operational risks, which is fraud, going up, the insider people are not aware of what they are doing, or they are undermining their system. And it has to take a precedent for many years to come and instruct that these numbers are going up and we need to clean it up.
Right.
I think when we are given a job as people, accountability and responsibility in fairness to the resources that has been handed over to us is what distinguishes us as to whether we are proper Ghanaians who are patriots or we are just playing around the job. Pure fraud comes from the top, and until Big Brother Felix James is ready to crack the whip, because the tone at the top will have to set the stage. We are likely to run for a very long time with this kind of fraud.
Indeed, he's giving us the assurances that that will happen. But I'm also looking at this idea. Very often, the problem is created. Then you bring in the Investigation Bureau, the Ghana Police Service, and the other security agencies to clean up, quote and unquote, to the mess. Why can't we incorporate, these security agencies, perhaps in the clearance process, in the interviewing process, at least just to ensure that the security apparatus is also involved in this?
When I was working in the BNI, for the many years I spent there, I have been undercover agent at many of these places. Not many people know I'm an auditor when I work at a bank. Not many people know I have management accounting. Not many people know I have finance background at the master's or the doctor level. Because the thing I always tell them is academics doesn't matter, and the highest school I attended is the secondary school. And they believe that because we are undercover, and many of the undercover jobs we have done over the years help the state. What we have reduced the BNI to is also one of the difficulties we are facing when it comes to fraud prevention and financial crime. I would be happy if my brother James can have the courage to speak to the director of BNI, Charles Kipper, who is my big brother, so that on the blind side of everybody, they could have those, tete-a-tete chats, and they could tell them what to look out for. And it makes life easier. Or the state has to take a decision that many of the institutions we have, from the district to the national, we need to be placing people undercover, just like we saw it being done in Tanzania, where Magufuli was the president. Some of us were in the Eastern Bloc, in the Western Bloc, and in the Central Bloc of Africa. And the ideas we give as consultants has helped many of those countries clean up fraud and make financial crime a thing of the past.
Right.
We can inculcate some of those things and make sure that background checks is even a major issue. Brazil, they don't do it. When I was joining the BNI, we were over 4,000 that started. It took us about 3 years, and we were 4,000 that started. They picked only 4 of us. Today, how many institutions even do background checks? And my brother from the West Africa Media Foundation was talking about the parliamentarians. Where do you think it's going to come from? If they are benefiting for political party funding activities for their election, Do you think on a normal day they are going to scrutinize everything? Look at the Public Accounts Commission and the mess that comes in every day. I think as a nation, from where President Mahama started from, we need to encourage him to continue. Other than that, we may clean it up and come back to square one.
I see, and that's what we want to prevent. Suleiman, for you, the revelation about even foreigners making their way onto the payroll, that's serious. Suleiman, I hope you can hear me. The point about even foreigners, I believe, making their way onto the payroll was something that came up in the last expose. And you know, having listened to Felix and the assurances coming through, the belief is that they would crack down on all of these activities.
So I want to say that, first of all, congrats to Felix for the appointment, and he has a big task, and I think that I should want to believe that he will deliver. He has been in the system and understands it. Number one is that the IT system in place now is completely rubbish, and it has to be. There shouldn't be any basis to want to renew the contract with whoever the service provider is. He talked about the consultant having written letters and so on and so forth. If the system is robust and it wouldn't allow for certain things to happen, I mean, human interference can be completely minimized. But if you have a system that is supposed to be using Ghana card for authentication and so on and so forth, and basically a paper can be placed there and it will be accepted. Any other card can be placed there and it will be accepted. That's completely not a system that can be trusted. And so I think that one of the basic things to do is to completely take away this bogus IT system that they are using at the moment. Number two is that I agree with him that it's a question of leadership. Because if you look at the system they have in place, where in terms of payments, at the end of every month, the institution head, where the national service person is posted, is supposed to sort of validate a form that will be filled, to be pushed to the district level. The district director or whoever is there has to validate that. It will come to the regional level. The regional level will do its own, their own assessment and do the validation before it comes to the national level. But we have instances where a regional director in charge of actually 2 regions says during a call, a conference call by the directors together with the then bosses, the director generals and so on. And he is complaining that I can't understand why at the end of the month, before I submit my validated list, about 1,000 people have already pre-approved in my region. And so you ask yourself, who does that approval? And who are the people who have controls in the system to go into the system and make the approvals? So essentially, it's a leadership question. You can say that, oh, there were maybe people who have access, the IT people and so on and so forth. But I believe that systems like that have authorization levels. So it's not everywhere that anybody at all can go.
We need to we need to move into the next phase of the conversation. We'll do that after the break. But in a minute, deal with this for me. When you release the tape tomorrow, or the footage tomorrow, your expectation and probably what you'd be doing beyond the presidential directive.
No, I mean, as journalists, what can we do beyond publishing the story and giving the facts to the public to understand what exactly we are talking about? And so it's a story that we are publishing tomorrow online, basically the inside story of all this thing that we've been talking about, and which partly forms the basis of the government's directive. But as I've said, it's all over. It's a scandal that is all over. From district level, regional level, schools that are not accredited, have students that are coming in to do national service. You have a situation where in a region with just 6 districts, for example, which you would consider not too a very opened region, and then you have in a year sometimes 13,000 or 14,000 people being posted to those regions. To go and do what? You have a region where you have just about 8,000 people who are doing service, and yet in the records, you have 32,000 people who have been posted to those regions. So it's a scandal of monumental proportions. And I'm happy that the government is interested.
Right.
I hope that the evidence that we give them can support the investigations that they are going to be doing.
And where I want us to move to next will be about the current crop of beneficiaries and those who are on the scheme. Felix, you have some brief comments to make to close this chapter on the investigations, and then we'll return.
It's leadership. It's essentially leadership. If the leadership did not want what has happened to happen, they would have stopped it. And it's as simple as that. I have seen the evidence he's spoken about, and it's at every level you see where there was...
and some are wondering that having spent 15 years there, did you speak up?
Well, you know, I was not in a position to.
Right.
And I think that it should be clear in our minds. The leadership that took over the scheme in 2017 has allowed this to happen. And at several levels, you would think that it's deliberate or that's what they came to power to do. Because you wonder how... Professor White was the last...
yes.
Professor White was the last... the NSA executive director.
Before the NPP.
Before the NPP came. During the entire tenure of Professor White, nothing of this sort happened. People worked, we had no ghost names. So why is it that under Professor White, nothing of this sort happened, and just after 2017, we had this happening? So you wonder the motive of people who allowed these things to happen.
It might not have been payroll fraud under his tenure, but other issues also cropped up.
Professor White, I don't know what you're talking about,
right.
Because I work with him. I understand. I don't know of any particular issue that rises closely, remotely.
In terms of magnitude, you're saying?
Yes. No, but then under Professor White, there was no reported issue of ghost names anywhere at all. Under Mr. Kwagbenu, there was nothing there at all. It was when we had somebody else. That's when we had the 2014 incident, and then when the MPP came to
So it's
power.
more about leadership for you.
It's leadership.
I see. When we return from this break, the next point will be about even tackling the welfare of those who are currently on the scheme. We'll hear about the plan and also take your thoughts here on the show. Please stay. A lot of revelations tonight about the National Service Scheme, but I'm very much concerned about going into the future and what the future holds for these latest crop of beneficiaries, because they will be on the scheme. There are issues about welfare and others that we need to talk about. Briefly, what's your plan for that? Let's look at that through the prism of the countless cases of arrears, payment issues. Are you tackling all of that?
I think that this evening we should be very grateful to the President John Mahama. You realize that even before he became president, he had expressed worry about the delay in payment of service personnel, especially so when the service allowance is a meager
figure,
715 Ghana cedis, considering that we have serious inflation issues around that. So he sat down, and once we presented the figures to him, he ordered for complete payment of all arrears. So from tomorrow, service person will start receiving all arrears due them from, I think, all the way from August, September, October, November, December, and then January.
And why did it take so long to clear all that?
It's also become part of the...
Is it intentional to, deny the beneficiary so that later on it comes in?
I think in the last 8 years, it's all become part of the humongous corruption, the incompetence that we had to deal with. Because you didn't understand why service persons' meager allowance due them will not be paid on time.
Do you have plans of increasing the amount? Because if you look at the level of inflation. If I'm a service person right now, the prayer right now to you would be, please increase the amount for us.
I wish, but then I think President Mahama understands the circumstance that we are in. And having reduced the corruption, the theory, and the scheme by that much, I'm sure already he's thinking about, okay, can we claw back some of the money that we have saved.
So it's in the pipeline.
A bit. So I'm sure he's thinking about it.
Okay, beyond that, by the time you're leaving the service or the authority, what would you want to be remembered for?
Well, for setting up very stringent auditing systems, standard operating procedures, and then instituting robust payroll system.
Right.
That's, if you were to come 10 years later, 20 years later, you would dare not touch it. Because with proper payroll, stringent audit systems, and definitely monitoring and evaluation systems that will stand the test of time. Nobody would come and touch this. We would have a certain number of people all working and getting paid on time rather than delaying. Of course, that is one for service persons. For the projects, I would want you to pay attention to the National Service Authority in the months to come as we roll out series of projects and schemes around the country to boost or give a real meaning to the President's agenda for youth development and empowerment.
Are we going to see more deployments to rural areas? Because everybody is clamoring for the big corporations.
I'm hoping that this year we would achieve 50% parity for personnel into private sector and then the public sector as well. We would be sending service persons to institutions where we feel their service will be felt the most. If it happens to be the rural areas, that would be good because we have to do something about the outcome of results in the free SHS, which has become a question of contention. And I think that we would also have to give opportunity for people who do not know this country very well to go to places
and
that
to
they
discover
more about and then understand how it works. Indeed. Because clearly, the Temale or the Damango that people spoke about in 10, 12 years ago is not the same place.
I see.
If you go to Sabaligu today, it's changed. Quite different completely. And people should get to know this country. We should encourage people to see other parts of this country. So the idea behind national services is rightly achieved.
And of course, many of you have good stories to tell one day about that. We need to go, Sulemana. The comments of Felix reminds me of, President Obama's speech that we need to build systems, correct? As we wrap up tonight, what will be your closing comments in terms of what he needs to be mindful of?
I think that we just need leadership that is committed to ensuring that the system works. The previous administration, I don't think, had that commitment. There are a number of projects that have been abandoned after monies have been spent. There were schemes that were developed to basically fleece service personnel of even the little that was coming to them, such as a system they called marketplaces. And I'm sure that Mr. Jemfi should be aware because as far as I know, he was a district director somewhere. So he would know about the marketplaces scheme that, it was used to deduct monies from service personnel. Sometimes people who never purchased anything had their monies deducted. I think that we need to also look into the payment system because as far as I know, payments were being made by gifts. And so to what extent was the gift system also bypassed or sometimes outwitted? We need to look into all that. Maybe at some point it would be great to have a conversation with Mr. Jemfi.
Indeed, and we can definitely guarantee you that conversation will definitely happen. Perhaps after the PM Express show. You never know. Grateful to you, Sulemana Brahima, for spending some time with us. He's the Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa. Also to you, our good friend Richard Kumado. Unfortunately, we're unable to give you the final word because of time. And grateful to you once more, Felix, for joining us in studio. And we wish you the very best, hoping that you'd surmount all the challenges. That's all we have for you tonight on the show. I'm Blessed Sugan. For more news, log on to myjoyonline.com. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.